Jewelry Design Center. We want to be your jeweler for life.
Breakdown, proudly presented by the Bobcat Collective at Montana State. The Bobcat Collective is the NIL collective that serves Montana State University student athletes. The collective has partnered with Montana State to connect fans, alumni, businesses, and local nonprofits with Montana State student athletes. Opportunities through the collective allow student athletes to earn compensation while serving the greater Montana State University community. Sign up now for memberships and enjoy automatic entry into raffles for free tickets while supporting the bright minds at Montana State. They have multiple different membership tiers, and you can also be a one-time supporter, and you can also business partner or corporate supporter. Visit bobcatcollective.com for more. Ridin with Rider back for another week. It looks like he's actually riding today. He's not even driving. He's just cruising, sitting shotgun. So where are you in the world?
Yeah, in shotgun, leaving Billings, heading to Bozeman. So
nice.
I get to tackle some work stuff here this week, tail end of the week today and tomorrow, and then sticking around and get to go watch the Cats play Saturday.
Well, very good. We'll get to the Cat game coming up this Saturday, but what did you think of the Cat game last Saturday? Because I think it was interesting. Last week we talked about Brent Vigen being a little bit salty after his team's 34-17 win at Cal Poly, and then on Monday he talked for 3/4 of his press conference about all the things they need to do better to live up to the standard that they've established. And I think probably being up 55-0 in the beginning of the fourth quarter is a pretty good response. I know Northern Colorado's not great, but they're better than they have been. But either way, it seemed like Vigen being mad at the end of that game 2 weeks ago, it seemed like it inspired his team in the first Saturday in November this last week.
Yeah, and you and I talked about it last week about how important it is to respond. Typically 2 back-to-back weeks on the road. It's hard to win football games on the road, professionally, at the high school level, at the college level. And so to see the response after, albeit a kind of up and down weird win down in San Luis Obispo, and then to go to a place that historically, honestly, Montana State hasn't played great at in Greeley. It's a weird environment, and so to see that, and it just speaks to a team that we've already talked about that maybe isn't quite as senior laden, and so yeah, I guess you could call them, I don't want to even say immature because that's not fair, but you get my point that like you get down on the road and you're not always sure how guys are going to respond, and to see maybe a little bit of a younger team go back-to-back weeks and respond with a huge exclamation mark in Greeley. That was really good to see, because it was total domination, start to finish, and so that was a good thing to see, especially as they head into the best time of the year, right? November. Your big boy pants better be on in November to play your best football.
I mean, here the funniest part is that I think that everybody that watches the Montana schools right now, I think it's become crystal clear to them that Montana and Montana State are on a collision course, and they are on a much different level than everybody else in the league and in the country, besides maybe one or two other teams nationally. And I think part of that's because of the regression of the FCS, but part of that's also because of the programs that have been established in both Missoula and Bozeman. But now we're getting to the point where everybody's just looking forward to November 22nd, so everybody's nitpicking the other side. And one thing I've been hearing from both sides is, well, you haven't played anybody. And then the Cats say, well, you guys haven't played anybody either. You guys played a D2. Well, you guys played Northern Colorado, blah, blah, blah. I keep reminding them that actually you're not going to feel like you played anybody until you actually play each other. That's one part of it. But the other part of it is I keep hearing from Grizz fans that are saying, well, the Cats they just play all their best players the whole game, and they just run up the score. And I try to remind people, Gregorak and I were talking about this earlier this week, the Cats are literally playing 21 guys on defense, always. Like, that's what their starting unit is basically too deep. Like, they play 7 guys on the defensive line, they play 4 linebackers, they play 4 corners, and they play basically 2 strong safeties and 2 free safeties. So whatever the math is there, like between 19 and 21 guys. So it's not that they're piling it on. That's just sort of the system that they're running. And like, if you see the 2s in there and they look lights out, it's because their 2s are guys like Talon Marsh and Zach Cruz, and sometimes even Neil Daly, and all these stud corners and the platoon that they have at free safety, which we'll get to in just a minute. But I think it's interesting because like they can't call off the dogs on defense because they basically just play so many guys already.
And I think it's been a couple of years since we talked about this exact concept. It was more related to the offensive line, where you're cross-training these guys and you're getting so many reps. And I just want to be very clear that this is very purposeful. You don't establish depth to that level without being very purposeful and getting guys ready in spring ball and in fall camp with meaningful reps, and then trusting them in game time to then get some meaningful reps on Saturdays. And then before you know it, like you said, you've got 20 guys. I mean, you've got a platoon. It's like a hockey shift where you got guys that can come in and come out. Are there areas where is it, drop-offs potentially in certain spots? Absolutely. That's why there's a first unit and a second unit, right? That's kind of how it is. But to me, it's the mark of a really good team that's developing this depth, and it will pay dividends down the line because somebody's going to, Neil Daly is going to go down like he did, and then you got somebody else that steps in. Like it's how it works, right? Yeah. I think it's so different as opposed to when I was coaching and playing. I feel it's been 15 years now, but like I think Coach Beck did a good job at our defensive line.
For sure.
And we actually did rotate quite a bit. We started rotating guys, and a guy like Caleb Schreibeis and Brad Daly, they couldn't go every single rep. They went a lot of them. But even they would take a spell. But I think there were some positions that just we didn't rotate. It just was like you were called to play every single snap. And nowadays there's so many snaps being played that you better be developing depth across the board. And so I think it's a very tactful approach. It's smart because you're creating depth because you're going to need depth.
Join Town Pump's Pump It Up Rewards Plus program and never pay full price for fuel again.
Save 5 cents on every gallon every day at any Town Pump across Montana.
Plus, earn and redeem points on your favorite in-store items to get free stuff with our clubs.
Stop in and pick up a rewards card. Download the Pump It Up Rewards Plus app today.
Or visit townpump.com/rewards to register and start saving.
Right down the road, pump it up. Oh, yeah.
Shine Beer Sanctuary is leading the charge when it comes to promoting beer culture in Montana. Located at the corner of Church and Main and downtown Bozeman, the locally owned and operated tap house and bottle shop has the best beer selection in the Treasure State. The bar has 32 rotating beers on tap with everything from Duvel to local ciders, gluten-free beers, and non-alcoholic options. The bottle shop has more than 400 beer offerings from all over the world, and Shine offers Cicerone-trained beer guides. Come enjoy beer heaven at Shine Beer Sanctuary in Bozeman.
Well, I also think that there is a certain brilliance to when you can platoon when you actually don't have like these. I'm trying to think of the best word to say, like these household names. Like Troy Anderson can't play every snap, but when Troy Anderson's not on the field, you automatically notice it because the next guy might be very solid, but he's not Troy Anderson. It's exactly what the Grizzlies are going through right now because I think both their number one safeties are excellent. Like I think that they're Madden rated 95s when it comes to college football world. And then the next guys are good. Like they're solid, but they are in the 80s. And so when those guys aren't on the field, you can tell. I think that's like the brilliance, especially the Cats secondary, is everybody's young. Everybody was kind of unproven before the year. So they're all sort of fighting internally for playing time too. And so then they all seem interchangeable because there's not like this one elite guy when you remove him, you notice his absence because they just have all these young guys that are sort of all on the come up. It seems like it actually makes it even easier to platoon and build depth. And honestly, it reminds me of the old school North Dakota State defenses. Because you would know every once in a while when they had the Jabril Coxes of the world or the Kyle Emanuels. But most of the time, you just look at them and you're like, who's in now? Who's in now? They look the same. What the hell? Like, how do they just have all these guys that look exactly the same?
They look exactly the same. I agree. And again, that was purposeful. Like Coach Bowl started that, right? I mean, that's what they did. They developed depth, and there's a method to that in the spring where they got so many reps and were working half field, and they would literally just rotate where you get so many reps, and there's nothing like experience. I don't care if you're playing if it's your golf game or if it's on the football field, like you need reps in these certain situations. You need quality reps that are meaningful, and so that's been developed. But yeah, it's you can see the growth in the Bobcat defense, and the drop off naturally becomes a little bit less as these guys are getting more and more meaningful reps. You may not be a starter, but you look at a guy like a JJ Dolan, who is now like, okay, I'm young, but he's getting meaningful reps and he's only getting better and more confident because, yes, there's things to fix, but he's getting more confident with more meaningful game reps, and it's the only way you develop it. Not necessarily, yes, it can happen in practice and in scrimmages, but the lights are brighter on Saturdays, and so you have to give kids meaningful reps and trust them to a certain extent. And then comes the preparation with that and getting guys ready and the coaching ability, and trying to keep it simple for the kids so they can play fast. But it's been fun to watch on the defensive side. There's no doubt.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned J.J. Dolan because he's a great example of what they've been doing, where he and Bryant Meredith are basically splitting that free safety, and JJ's basically actually become like the starter, but they're basically playing co-reps. It's basically split right down the middle. But then JJ's also been playing at the nickel spot too, giving Takari Gray a little bit of a spell too. And that's when it gets so elite defensively, when multiple guys can play multiple spots, multiple corners can switch sides. You don't have to just play field or boundary or left or right. You can move around the formation. So even if your corners can play in the nickel and vice versa, now all of a sudden you can do whatever you want. If you're a defensive coordinator, if you can rotate like that in the secondary, and I think that's been an important part of it. It's been funny because Dolan, particularly, and Meredith too, I know that they haven't had a ton of production because everybody in the front seven is just such sure tacklers, and on the perimeter too at the corners. So those guys aren't getting much their way at that free safety spot, but they're grading out really high in terms of taking care of their responsibility. And also in the scheme, that's not a spot that's going to get a lot. You're basically the touchdown saver a lot of times, but it's been interesting to see just the versatility of the amount that they can rotate in the secondary because a couple of those guys can play multiple spots.
Yeah. And that position is interesting. I mean, it's in their defense, he's often, a post defender, in the single high safety. We call him a post defender, going to be tracking the ball inside out a lot. So angles are really important, being sure tacklers. So we should just, tracking the ball inside out, banana angles, long stride, short stride, making tackles in space. And then saving the home run balls, being deeper than the deepest, driving downhill on the football. Those are all things that post defender is required to do. And those guys, it allows you to play. It's got a little bit of recessed ball to it, which is fun, right? Now that's when they're in the single high look, when they do play too high, when they're playing quarters or quarter half. That's a little bit of a different ball game. But all that to say, I feel like those guys are doing a good job from a tackling standpoint, tracking the ball inside out, playing in the secondary and tackling, which I'm a dork about, is just, it's all about your angles. You've got to take good angles to the football, know where your help is at, know where the sideline is, tracking the near hip. And I feel like those guys are both doing a good job. And those are the things that allow you to play early. If you're somebody that can be trusted, and I'm a post defender, my job is to be deeper than the deepest, drive downhill on the football. When it's run, I'm taking an appropriate angle, using the sideline as a 12th defender, being physical, playing with good eyes. Like, those guys are doing that. And a guy like JJ Dolan, albeit, fairly undersized in stature, but still knows where the ball's at, doing his job, been a sure tackler. And those guys are doing a good job. I got a lot of respect for them, especially for being young guys in the secondary.
Yeah, no doubt.
Life can change in an instant. If you've been hurt in an accident, suffered from medical negligence, or are facing criminal charges, you don't have to face it alone. At Ryan, Miller & Coburn, we're here to listen and fight for you. We're your neighbors, traveling across Montana to stand by your side as your link to justice. Real people, real help, right here in Montana. Ryan, Miller & Coburn, your Montana attorneys.
When it comes to just the overall mechanism of the Montana State defense, what do you think is the thing that has been the driving factor forward? Like, Is it just the holistic nature of the personnel? Is it the four seniors up front? What do you think is the thing that has been the trigger point to them being so good defensively so far this year?
I think any elite defense, it all starts with it has to start with stopping the run. And so how do you stop the run? Stop the run by really good gap integrity, particularly on the defensive front. And so absolutely it helps with the interior guys and the front four that are doing an unbelievable job staying gap sound, occupying blocks up front. And then, but stopping the run has to do with your run fits. And I've said that a lot. Like, I just don't feel like when it comes to guys that are, guards pulling and, pin and pull type looks or zone type looks or whatever it looks like, kind of the RPOs, like they just seem to be in the right spot when it comes to run fits. And that's a lot of repetition. That's from, I asked this to Jody, Coach Owens, when I was in the office probably a month ago, because I said the same thing. I said, we used to do this. We used garbage cans. We did all this. Like, we talked through run fits, but seemingly we never were quite as disciplined in our run fits. I said, what makes it your defense so good? Because they never seem to have two guys in a gap. For any listeners that are listening, if you got two guys in a gap, you're in trouble. Right? There's only a certain amount of gap. There's a gap between the center and the guard. There's a gap between the guard and the tackle. There's a gap between and if somebody pulls, you now have a new gap on the other side of the center. How are you going to match it? Right? All it is a numbers game. And so you have to know, as gaps exchange, where you're going to be. And to Jody's point, he just said it's so many reps. It's also a combination of simple schemes and guys that are smart football players. So, long-winded answer. They stop the run. They limit explosive plays. We haven't seen a lot of those, right? We've seen some, and it's like a shock to the system when we see it, right? Some of these long balls and things like that. We haven't seen any of that. And so I think it's those two things, and they've done a pretty good job taking the football away. But stop the run, limit the explosives, take the ball away. That's the mark of a good defense. And to me, they're doing those three things at a high level.
And I think you cannot underrate, if you have a true war daddy nose that will I mean, Paul Brott, he gets no tackles. Like, he doesn't have stats, but he eliminates multiple gaps. And now all of a sudden it makes it easier to be gap sound because there's one less gap to even be in, because he just took two of them and threw them out the window.
Yeah. I mean, it's not a sexy spot to be, but the guy is a force inside, and he's opportunistic too. There's times where he does make those plays. He's very disruptive, and he's going to be a guy that is going to continue to go. The defense will go as he goes, and so the fact that he's been able to stay healthy and continue to be disruptive on the interior is great. And then you got a guy like Talon Marsh that's in there too, where he's getting more comfortable. Like, he is disruptive. Defensive front, you can be dominant in the defensive front. You are going to be a successful defense. You're going to give yourself a fighting chance in so many ways, and that it all starts with that front four.
How about Talon Marsh? Where does that one rank in big man touchdowns for you? We saw Minter rumbling, stumbling, bumbling years ago. Didn't Dan had a touchdown once upon a time?
Oh,
too?
yeah.
And then he acted like he was going to die afterwards because he's so dramatic about everything.
That's him. Yeah, that's him for sure. You probably didn't practice the next week either. I'm teasing. Hopefully he's not listening. I love
that guy was a beast, though. That guy was a beast. He always would come to the post-game press conferences like he just had gotten absolutely run over by a truck. And it's like, you're the truck, man. You're the one that ran everybody over. Why are you the one that's limping around and acting like this?
No, Danny O he was elite, man.
He's
so fat, quick twitched, and he played his tail off, and he made a ton of big plays. And he's probably one of the funniest guys you'll ever meet too, which is good. But where do you rank that? Some of those big man touchdowns. I think that the thing I appreciate, I don't know where I rank it, but I will tell you this: the thing I appreciate the most about that was the celebration.
Hilarious.
It was hilarious, but also it's so indicative of the team. You know,
sure.
like you could tell they care about each other. And that's, the celebration with a big man like that. They respect the guy. And so I think it's indicative of the team and the mentality there, and they're just what they're all about. And so I think for me, that's definitely up there. I don't know where I'd rank it in comparison to those others, but I do know this: seeing those big guys score touchdowns is awesome. I mean, all three of those guys scored one more touchdown than I ever scored, so I got a lot of respect for it.
No doubt, right? And they should make I wish I could just have a montage of when they got the flag for the unsportsmanlike, and then they panned to Vigen, and he kind of was like,
I'm pissed, but not really.
Whatever, dude. We're up 48-0, and that's the funniest thing I've ever seen. So go for it, man. Like, yeah, I think he was kind of just like, it's all good, whatever.
I think as a coach, man, there's part of it that, the disciplinary thing, and you're like, oh, don't do that. But it's at the same breath, you're like, you work so hard for all year round for 12 given Saturdays. And a lot of it is so intense, and you celebrate in the locker room, and you want to keep your composure throughout a game. But then there's times like that where you're like, this is what it's all about. This is what these kids are working so hard for, and to go and celebrate something like that's pretty special.
Yeah. One question on the offense. Lamson looked better. His timing was more on, and I threw for 336 yards, which it's been a year and a minute since the Bobcat quarterback has done that. I'm not saying he should be the front runner for Big Sky Conference MVP, but I think he should definitely be in the conversation on the offensive side just because of his efficiency. What do you think?
100%. 100%. Man, as you look at, how things have gone, I guess I'll say this. If you don't have a loss to South Dakota State and you don't lose to Oregon and they're 9-0, is he in the conversation?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
100%, right? So, again, to me, you can't even how do you factor in the Oregon game, which, by the way, still competed his tail off and actually had a pretty darn good game in that game, all things considered.
Totally.
But you look at the stats, you look at what the value to the team, and I think his leadership ability, what he means, 110%. Now, these next couple of weeks are gonna be critical in that game against the Grizzlies in Missoula here in 3 weeks. That's going to be pretty indicative because who do they have right now as the front runner? Probably Ayat.
There's always a party in Montana, whether you're going to a wedding, a football game, a concert. Montana Party Bus can get you there safe and will take you anywhere in Montana. You can relax with friends in style, luxury, and safety. Plus, they're Montana-based for local and regional travel within Montana borders. Montana Party Bus is great for both large and small groups with a capacity of up to 30 guests. If you want to elevate your event, call them anytime, 406-200-8096. You can also visit mtpartybus.com. Travel anywhere in Montana in style with the Montana Party Bus. Good question. Because I think that actually a couple of the Grizz guys will take votes from each other, right? Because I think that, Gilman's already 1,000-yard back. He's got 14 touchdowns. Wortham's been National Player of the Week twice, but Ayat's leading the country in passing. So I think all three of them are. I think the top four candidates for the entire league are in the state of Montana, and I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's fun to see. That's special. Those guys are weapons. I mean, Wortham, that's a scary guy. You're a defender. That's the guy you want to get balled up. And then Gilman's is a tough runner. He's a creative runner. And then look at Ayat, man, and he's slinging it. But as we all know, all of that goes out the window here in 3 weeks. It doesn't really mean a whole lot. It's crazy in that game, which we'll get a chance to download more on. And but even my dad and I were connecting last night over. I had dinner with him and brought the kids over and saw him and my mom and just talking about the game. We're 3 weeks out and people are already talking about it. You can already feel the buzz. You can feel the collision course coming, and it's coming. I'm excited.
It's definitely coming, no doubt. Okay, last thing. What are your thoughts on this Weber matchup because I watched Weber the last 2 weeks. Somehow I got watching the Weber Eastern game 2 weeks ago. I was texting a couple of my other buddies about it, and they were like, "Why are you watching that?" They're like, "Stop watching, stop watching that." I was like, "Well, I'm doing some scouting so I can have good stuff to say on the radio when Eastern and Weber both come to Montana." But anyways, Weber, they're just strange. It's just a strange, like they looked the same for forever. Ron McBride, Jay Hill, like they look the same, and now they don't look like that anymore. And it's just totally weird. They're just like a team without an identity. And I just think that I don't know what to diagnose in terms of the matchup for the Cats because I don't really know what Weber's trying to do. Like I don't know what their point of operation is. So it's an interesting deal for them. But it's just another obstacle in the way of this collision course, like we're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, I think they lack identity really on both sides of the football. I know that Weber tends to play specifically down there when you're on the road. It can be a little bit of an interesting place to play, but as they're coming up to Bozeman, it hasn't been real friendly to them. And so I think without an identity, quarterback looked like an athletic kid, but not overly accurate. Again, there just seems to be a lack of cohesiveness for them across the board. I think it's going to be tough sledding for them on Saturday. On the road, it just doesn't tend to be too friendly. But sometimes those teams with nothing to lose, they can be a little more dangerous, right? If they got some tricks up their sleeve, you get them hanging around the first quarter. We're going to know a lot here in that first quarter, tail into that first half, how the game's going to go because, you're playing for pride at that point. They're not playing for a playoff spot. It's going to be an interesting matchup, but I just think that the firepower and the home field advantage, I think it's going to be too much for Weaver.
Ridin With Rider here on the Big Sky Breakdown podcast series. Good to see you, man. Drive safe, and we'll catch up next week, but thanks for checking in.
Likewise. Thanks for having me, Colter.